As of May 21st, Senua Saga Hellblade 2 released, and we have thoughts. This is my Xbox and me's review discussion on all things Hellblade 2. I am joined by the wonderful Crash and the wonderful Mr. Paul Despawn. Boys, the game is out. We have been waiting a relatively long time for this game in the grand scheme of things when it comes to all things Hellblade. And this is obviously the game that was sold to us with the Series X. I remember it being showcased at the Game Awards with the Series X to show off its graphics and all of that good stuff. If I had to ask you to sum this up in with a one-liner, a one-sentence, Crash, we'll start with you, what would it be?
Pretty decent movie.
Okay. Despawn,
Hi.
one-liner, what would it be?
This might be one of the most thought-provoking experiences I've had on Xbox for a long time. And it's a pretty okay game.
And for me, it would be great experience, okay game. With that out of the way, let's start off our discussion. Let's start with the story. The story of Hellblade to Senua Saga. Obviously, sequel to the first game that released exclusively on PlayStation back in 2017? I believe so, 2017. And obviously came over to Xbox a while later, actually, and I didn't get to the game until, funny enough, last week, which was really interesting. I'm very, very thankful that I played the original and now I've played this. Otherwise, I think I would have been totally lost in this game's story, which I was kind of lost anyway. Crash, the story's there. Before we start that, did you beat the first game in the end? Because I know you had played this first game, but did you actually beat it?
I didn't beat it. Before it came out, I did watch a recap of everything, which I was basically at the end anyway, so it was just like the last bit that I caught up with.
Oh yeah, okay. And story thoughts. What did you think of the story of Senua Saga Hellblade 2?
There was certain points where the story was very captivating and I was completely like drawn in, and then there were other points where I don't think I cared about the story was happening and I had to fight my urge to not pay attention.
You had to fight your urge to pay attention. To not, your urge to then not, I get you, okay, makes sense. Sorry, I'm muddled up there, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's very you about things, so let's be totally honest. That makes perfect sense. Even in a game this short, you still struggle to beat it. Don't lie.
Oh, it was a real struggle. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. There were a couple of times where I was like, maybe I just told the boys like, it's not me. It's not
you. I respect it. Despawn, story-wise, what did you think of the game?
So, again, I can't talk about the story in 2 without the story in 1. Again, because I did similar to Crash on you, I think, where I basically finished it the night before the first game, before the new one dropped. And I think coming fresh off it helped me a bit more. Because it definitely... Where Hellblade 2 feels a bit... I'm not going to call them Senua Saga and Senua Sacrifice. Hellblade 1 and Hellblade 2. Just because it's easier. Hellblade 2 feels more self-contained, but it still has like some elements of the past game. And I think I like how it feels like a progression of the character. And we're not going to talk spoilers today. We'll do that another time. But I feel like the way that they handled Senua's story going into this was interesting, and how she came out of it in the end, equally so. And I think the journey along the way was fantastic for me, to the point where when I put down the controller when credits ran, I had to sit here for a minute just in silence thinking about what I'd just seen and done. It had a genuine effect on me as an experience. And I love the way that they play with folklore and things like that and stuff that we're all familiar with the first one, but I think they lean into it really well in this second one, and that I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm not the smartest man on God's given earth, so I need stories that make sense from start to finish. And for me, I think that's where I struggle with this game. Not that the through point of what you're going through makes perfect sense, right? But you pick up certain characters along this journey that you're just like, and who are you? And why do you matter? and I don't think you ever really get an answer of who you are and why you matter. This is very much Senua's story still, right? Like this is Senua's story where the first game you don't interact with anybody, really. It is literally, I don't think you do interact with anybody if I'm not mistaken.
Nope.
This is very much obviously the continuation of that, but there's certain moments in this game that I agree with you that are breathtaking in set pieces and things like that, and we'll get to that. But its story itself, it felt more like a 1.5 than a true sequel for me. And maybe its length plays a portion of that as well, but it felt very much like, okay, we're on this journey with this character again. And you get thrown in, obviously, the opening is obviously you're on a boat, and it's very much like, okay, we're on a boat. We don't know why we're on the boat. We don't know how we got on the boat. You disagree? I see. Okay, talk to me.
It very quickly explains why she's on that boat.
Why is she on the boat?
Because she's trying to find the people that are the Northmen that came in the original game and killed her tribe. And,
okay.
Those are the people that are on the boat. So she's off. She got kidnapped in the beginning of the game to get taken to them to stop them. That's why she's on the boat. You're pulling a face like that's not specifically what happens.
No. I'm putting a face because I don't think that's well explained enough. Then yes, I understood that, but I don't think there's enough there to go off of where the relationships of the characters you come across. If for me that it really matters, and I would have liked to have gotten, and I think that's again, I know I've said length probably 4 times already, right? But that's where I think the problem is, because I felt like for me to really feel something for what she's gone through in this journey, or where we go, is I needed that beginning part. I needed to see the tribe be killed. I needed to see her emotionally be destroyed in that way, and then she comes up with this grand plan and
I mean,
like, for me.
Yeah, but I mean, the response to that would be that the first game is technically all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But I generally
literally all of that, yeah.
Do agree with Fix. I feel like the dropping in point in the beginning is very odd, and it doesn't feel pleasant narratively. And I think Despawn, your experience, because you finished the first one the day before, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where for you it felt like it was just a pickup and continuation from the ending.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it didn't feel like that whatsoever. It felt like I was just put into the middle of a story. It made sense where I was. It made sense. Everything made sense. It just didn't feel like the beginning of a story. It felt like I was a chapter in or like 3 chapters in on a 10 chapter story or something like that.
You know what it reminds me of? Is when you go to your favorite video game con and they play you a demo of the game and you've just been dropped into that portion of the demo. That's what it feels. The start of this game, that is what it feels like. It's like, all right, I know who the character is, and all right, we're on this journey. All right, go. Okay. And it's like, where's my foreplay? I need a little bit. I needed a little bit of foreplay. Right. You know, I did. That's what I needed.
That's fine.
Don't get me wrong. I did enjoy the recap that they did at the start of the game. I thought that was very well done. I thought it for new players who hadn't played the first game, which there will be thousands of who are picking up this game for the first time. I think it does a really good job of explaining who the character is, what she's been through, etc., etc. But yeah, it didn't work for me as a whole. The starting. And that's again, fine. As the story goes on, I enjoyed large portions of it, of what I was experiencing. But overall, it wasn't the, I don't know, we spoke about it on the podcast a lot, right? But it wasn't the it is a big AAA game. Graphically, we'll get onto all of that. But story-wise, I wanted something else. I don't know what I wanted, I'll say. But I wanted something else from it in the end, once I got to the ending as well.
I personally disagree. Like, again, I understand where you're coming from and stuff like that, but this is exactly what I wanted from this story. I think there is enough of a continuation from Hellblade 1, and I think the character growth throughout this game. And like you say, while it may have felt short, I think there was enough meaningful actions within the story that made me feel like, this is a great growth for Senua as a character. And again, don't want to say anything too much about the ending, but the way it ends and how it ends and where she's at as a character was a perfect ending for me. Yeah.
I will say, I think the story is very much an artistic journey and not sort of like your typical narrative. And so if you're going to be going into the game, don't be going into it expecting sort of your stereotypical story, I think.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I really do. Let's move into some gameplay, where I think this game has its biggest issues. I don't want to, again, my opening line literally was, it was a fantastic or a great experience and an okay game. I've never known of a, maybe I do know, but maybe I'm being a bit flippant with my comment. There isn't many sequels to games that I play and the game goes backwards in its gameplay. And for me, this does that. Your first thing you're gonna go to your head of like, there's no way the combat is so much better. Yes, the combat feels a lot more fluent, feels a lot more crisp, looks a lot nicer. All of that is true. But that is not what this game is built on. It's not built on its combat. It's built on puzzles, and it's built on walking forward, which means exploration and traversing. And those are the two things in this game that I think it doesn't do well. I very rarely have I played a game in the last few years where I have no sense of exploring a world. Even in smaller worlds like this, there's certain moments that you just walk around this world and you're like, oh, I can clearly go over there. Oh, wait, no, I can't. Oh, I can clearly go over... No, wait, no, I can't. It's like, no, this game feels like a roller coaster. You're on it and you're moving forward.
Yeah, it's very structured in what they want you to see and do, yeah.
You're not moving left, you're not moving right, you are moving forward. And they want you to see what is in front of you. And it's something that, again, we didn't get to talk about on the podcast at all when I played the original, where I sort of wanted to say, like, oh, I really hope in the sequel there's a little bit more traversing, there's a little bit more getting lost in the world, a little bit more
exploration.
All of that. And this game doesn't have that either. It very much is, you're on the tracks, move forward, and enjoy the experience, which it is a great experience. Let's not get that twisted. But that, for me, was quite a huge letdown of being so on rails. And then the other big letdown for me is I'm someone who doesn't enjoy puzzles. Or, I should say, doesn't enjoy hard puzzles. I have learnt from this game, I'm somebody who doesn't enjoy easy puzzles either. Because, oh my god, where the first game challenged me and had me at a moment of, this game isn't for me. Oh, wait, it clicks, which is obviously the portals. Oh, wait, it clicks. Oh, now I feel like the smartest dude in the world. This game is very much baby's first puzzle game. In some aspects for me, it doesn't feel challenging at all.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire experience, it's very much like, all right, I know what I'm doing. And there's a few things I'll call out later about signposting and stuff that I will applaud them for. With its puzzles, it's almost too easy in some aspects.
They very much signpost the answers to everything. And again, and I think it's a detriment to what they're trying to do. They're trying to tell a story rather than have a quote unquote gameplay experience. That I think the gameplay is the secondary part to this.
Probably should have made a movie then.
Probably. But it is what it is. It is a game. We are playing it. But I think they're very much a case of like, I feel like the puzzles, while simple, I think they explained them very well and made it very obvious of like how puzzles work in this game. I don't think I got stuck in it. The only thing I did get stuck in is when I saw you struggling with it today.
Yep.
Where there was like one point where it wasn't clear how to get up onto a ledge, and that was it.
But yeah, sure.
But once it clicks,
it was it was such a simple thing. Like it was and all it is because of the way you come into that section. If you did it first, you wouldn't even consider it to be hard. In any way, shape, or form. But because I did the other two first in that certain section, it's like, oh, I'm banging my head against a wall. If you do that moment first, it's a simple puzzle. It's not hard at all.
Like I said,
at all.
The actual puzzle elements aren't hard. It's just, traversing within the puzzle itself is...
Talk about gameplay as a whole, though, for me.
The gameplay, again, like, I kind of echo what you're saying about the puzzles. I think, they're very simple to the detriment of, like, they are simpler than the first game. The combat, to me, is where it kind of shines compared to the first one. I genuinely, like, everything feels more visceral and hits feel more powerful. And I think what helps that is that to me it does.
Sure.
I think what helps that for me is that I'm not fighting ghosts and specters and like I am in the first one. I'm actually fighting humans, or I won't name them what they are, but the enemies in this one are more corporeal, shall we say. And I feel like when you do like pull off some really good attacks, and like you have the end cutscene or the set piece for when you kill someone, that feels visceral, brutal, and there is some fight scenes in this that were genuinely great. But gameplay is very secondary in this entire thing, so it's a bit hard to praise it too much.
Yeah, okay. I think the kills, the moment you're talking about the visceral thing, they're cool the first time you see them. They stop being cool the very next time that you get the same exact kill sequence on an enemy. And it happens a lot. They draw out the combat scenes way too much with way too many enemies for me, where by the time I get to that second or third enemy, a lot of the times I'm like, I want this to be over because I already had my moment where like the enemy came out, I got shocked, I'm drawn into the combat, I killed the guy, it felt intense for a moment, and then I'm getting to the same combo where it's block, 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 dodge, hit, kill, do the same, almost the same animation. Sometimes it'll change slightly and it'll adjust with the enemy coming in, but then they do the same thing where you get the kill, the enemy comes in, grabs you, and then it just repeats that process over and over consistently throughout the whole game, pretty much, with the different enemy types where it's just adjust the animations or whatever, right?
100%. I agree with you to a certain degree, Despawn, where I do agree with you, the ending moment of killing somebody feels quite cool, but I think leading up to everything in the fight doesn't feel amazing. Like, it feels better than the first game, sure, but are we really comparing this game to a game of 2017?
I mean,
but I don't compare it to that game. Like, it's a sequel, right? So in some aspects I do, but in terms of its gameplay, I'm comparing it to games of this gen, right? Like, when I hit something, I want it to feel like I am hitting it. And in this game, it doesn't feel like that. When you go to hit an enemy, it doesn't give you that same feedback that you expect to get. At least for me, when I'm playing the game anyway. It just doesn't feel very much like when we spoke about Redfall, right? When walking. We know what walking is supposed to feel like when you play a game. I have the same problem with this game where I hit something and it's like, it doesn't quite do it. And there's little animations that I would love to have the sword to have got, actually caught in there a little bit more and just rip it out, or little, and I'm sure, hey, I don't make games, I'm sure it's goddamn hard to do, but those are the moments for me that make this game not on that different level. Its world and things like that, amazing, but go on, Chris, it seems like you agree with me, so talk to me about gameplay.
Yeah, I agree. The combat really does feel weightless a lot of the time, not just hitting enemies, it's getting hit and dodging and all that. For me, it felt as if there was no response, there was no registration. Like, I was seeing stuff happen, but I felt as a player, I was unimpactful in what I was doing. And there were moments where, like, a dude twice my size is swinging a sword at me with both hands and I'm deflecting it super easy. It just doesn't register the way I feel like it should have. When they are telling, like, the rest of the experience is super, super immersive, and then you get to the combat where you as a player, it feels like that immersion goes when the gameplay comes in with the game.
We'll say dodging feels good in this game, and that feels weighty for me. And the way she sort of ducks under a sword and she sort of moves over to either left or right, and you sort of, if you time it perfectly, it feels very much like, God, that sword was about to take off my goddamn head. Like, I do think dodging feels weighty and responsive and realistic, but it's the other combat moments that don't for me. Parrying doesn't.
The parrying,
and actually attacking. So,
I would say
yeah.
Straight up blocking didn't feel great. Parrying almost non-existent. It feels like that has genuinely taken a step back for me. Like in the first game, like parrying was a very big part. I didn't feel like I did a lot of genuine parrying. Like obviously between blocking and parrying is a slightly different thing. Like you could just hold the block button and block it. But if you
it became a cutscene though, didn't it? And
yeah,
it feels very much like, and it's not a cutscene. It is actually gameplay, but because of how beautiful the damn game is, which we'll get to, you can't tell sometimes. But yeah, the parry system is cool when it comes off.
But it
in
felt
this game,
so much harder to trigger it in this one than it did the first one,
which I think is purposeful.
Yeah,
but I don't think it should have been.
No. I think like it should have been, I think it should have still been on the level as the first one.
I think it's a case of reward me as the player. If I time this correctly, which it felt like, well, I'm timing this the same way I did the last time I got a parry, but now I'm just blocking. It's like it decides after 1 in every 10 parries, it lets you actually parry. That's how it felt for me.
I could be wrong, but I don't think you could actually parry every hit.
No,
I think it was specific attacks that you could parry.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the traversal and stuff like that, though, because you're not a walking sim guy. Like, you're not into the Walking Deads and the Telltale games and things like that. So, and that's what this is for me. It feels like it's the extension of. It's a AAA Unreal Engine 5, experience of that. But this is very much what it feels like.
Yeah, funny enough, I didn't mind the walking sim bits too much because the game's gorgeous and the story at times was interesting enough to keep me in. It's the fact that at the end of a walking sim, I'd get to a puzzle section that was uninteresting, or I'd get to combat that felt unrewarding. That made the walking sim portion just sort of feel a little lackluster to me because I knew it was coming, right?
Walking sim might be a little bit unfair, but you know what I'm trying to say for the conversation.
The traversal bits,
The traversals. The traversal's a way better word than walking sim. So.
The journey parts, shall we say?
Yes. Yeah, sure. I don't know. Anything else you want to add on gameplay before we move on? Despawn, anything that we didn't speak about when it comes to its general. There isn't a lot of gameplay here to talk about, unfortunately. So is there anything we missed?
I love the new addition into the game with the hidden faces. I thought that was quite interesting. The way that you can obviously find hidden faces around the map or the area that we're in, and you had to focus on them to be able to like show a different area. But it only led to like a secondary like notice point that gave you some backstory. If they'd have done something more interesting with that, that would have been cool.
I found none of those.
Fun fact, neither do I.
I just found out now those are in the game.
It legitimately tells you one of them. Yeah, as part of it. It's like where you have to focus on it, and a face in a rock.
I don't remember.
Do you know what I think it is though, Crash?
What?
Think about. I don't think the game rewards you. Exploring. A part of exploring is finding nothing. That's a part of exploring in this games. There's very much moments in this game where I was like, oh, there's probably a I don't know what they're called. What are the tower things called?
The totems, should we say?
Yeah, the totems. Perfect. There's probably a totem over there. I don't care. I'm just gonna keep going because it's only gonna take me 2 seconds to the right for this totem for this story that I don't really care about because I care about the main story, which I do care about. So I'm not even gonna go off that tiny beaten path, and it's so small, and I'm not rewarded outside of the extra addition of story, which, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be. It's a story-driven game. But it was kind of my critique in the first game where I was like, this game's going to need some collectibles. Do you know what I need in this game? I don't need the totems. You know what I need? I need a doll. I need a toy sword. I need a... Do you know what I mean? I need those little things.
You want an animation
that then give you story.
Like,
just something like that where it's like, as the player, I need to keep an eye out for something that shouldn't be in this world.
Yeah.
And let me go and explore for the toy box or I'm using these as the examples. Yeah. I think that would be so much more immersive for me as a player to want to go and find those things.
I will say that, like, I've no problem with the idea of the totems and the trees themselves. I think the problem is the game actively tells you when you've missed one, so it makes collecting the rest of them pointless. Because it's obviously, as you're going down the totem list, it highlights each one that you found.
Yeah,
yeah. And you find them in order, and it shows directly, oh, you've missed 2 already. So it's like, well, if I know I've missed 2, I'm not going to go look for the rest of them, am I?
Agreed.
So, I know I can go back, and again, it's not really a spoiler, there's a chapter select after you finish the game.
Oh, yeah.
So you can go back and get them if you want to, and you can get, like, they do tell some kind of interesting backstory about what's going on in that world. But yeah, like, if you've missed a couple, and it's the same with the tree side as well, if you miss the trees, it tells you them as well. Because you can only collect them in order. So yeah, if you've missed, like, I missed the first half of the trees. I got most of the second half because I started actively looking for them. But yeah, it was very much a case of, like, once you know you're not going to get all of them in one run, why bother trying to get them in that run?
My issue with them was that once you walk away, they would stop. And I get why, because the voices... Because the voices are a big part and they're constantly talking during those. So I get why it stops. It's just, as a player, I don't think that feels great.
It was so much better in the first one because it did the same thing, but you had to get so much further away to get it to stop. This one, it felt like you turn around and it just instantly cut off. It's like, so like you could get a good distance in the first game, but it's like by this one, it's just like you get it, you turn around and it's like, oh, well, I didn't even bother needing to get that.
I didn't love it in the first game either, if I'm honest. I found I did the same thing in the first game and was like, oh, I have to go back and listen to this again. Great. All right, turn around, stand still, swing the camera around a few times because I'm like, well, I'm just listening. Like, yeah, very,
you just get to look at how pretty the game is.
Yeah, of course. Length-wise, let's move on to length of this game, Hellblade 2. Crash, how long did it take you to beat Hellblade 2?
I think I was just over 6 hours.
Despawn, how long did it take you to beat it?
I don't know how long it took to beat it, but my stats on Xbox say it was about 10 hours. But
yours said 6 last time I checked.
Right, yeah, no, I'm looking at it now. So I've spent 10.5 hours in the game. I definitely didn't spend 10.5 hours playing it. So yeah, I'd say it felt about 6 or 7 because I did a lot of, like, looking around and trying to do a lot of stuff in there. And we probably won't talk too much about it, but I did spend a lot of time in photo mode.
Well, we'll get to it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was a 6 as well. 6 hours. I do this new thing now where I don't like it, by the way. Microsoft, stop giving codes out to people for your games if they're just going to upload the entire game, by the way. As much as I love it, because I like to track where I am at with games, it helps me stay focused on trying to beat a game. Literally, day of, 5.5 hours of gameplay just uploaded straight up there. I'm like, God damn, that was a bit quick. So yeah, that's out there, but whatever. Yeah, it took me 6 hours as well to beat the game. Do we have a problem with the length? Obviously, there's a big conversation out there right now. Obviously, people have their opinions, when it comes to games. I'll speak for myself. I have no problem with the game being 5.5 hours, 6 hours long. As long as you tell me a story that I care about, with gameplay that's engaging, with all the things that I want from the game. I couldn't give a crap if the game was 3 hours long. Like, I generally couldn't. It's $50 if you're not playing it on Game Pass. And I think it's £50 on Steam and PC as well. So, I'm absolutely fine with that. If you're telling me it's $10 or £10 an hour to enjoy this fantastic, beautiful, amazing experience, I would 100% pay it every day of the week. So for me, I have no issue with the game's length. What I have an issue with is the stuff I've spoken about, right? Like feeling like I'm missing the beginning part of the game, just to give me a little bit more context. Just little things. I get you disagree there, Despawn, but like just little things like that for me. Like if that brought it out to 6.5 hours, like for me that would have added a lot for me as a player. Chris, you have a problem with the game being 6 hours, 5 hours long?
No, I think like they took the time they needed to tell the story that they told, and I think it was enough time. I think it feels worse than it actually is because of the moments where you're actually like playing the game and gameplay. I think if that was polished up, I think the consensus around it would be completely different, because I feel like the rest of the game is so tightly packaged and done so well that I don't think the time is too big of an issue.
Despawn?
Same. Like, I've got absolutely no issues with the length of time I spent in this game. I feel like exactly as you said, it is very much a case of they spent the right amount of time to tell the story that they wanted to tell, and I think they nailed that. So, like, I am happy with the amount of time I spent on that. Would it have been better if it was more? I can't answer that. I think what it is good enough for me. But yeah, I have no problems with the time at all.
And let's finally talk about some graphics and performance. I played on PC with a 3080 graphics card. Game was absolutely beautiful. I had no frame rate issues. I had only one crash issue throughout my entire gameplay, which was a very easy restart the game and it worked perfectly. Graphically, this is the best game. This is the best looking X. I have booted it up on Series as well. This is the best looking Series X game to date. There's nothing. It might be the best looking game I've ever played, if I'm being honest.
I feel bad for Cyberpunk 2077 because it's no longer going to be used in those benchmark shows anymore. It's all going to be Hellblade now.
Nah, it'll still be Cyberpunk as open world.
Yeah,
it's open world. It's still it's very impressive to see an open world. Like, I think that's my takeaway from this was like, from an Xbox point of view, right, which I've been quite negative on lately, Xbox as a whole. It was like, I hope they can share this, whatever they know how to do. I hope they can share this across every studio that's using Unreal Engine 5, right? Like, can you imagine? I'm not even talking just the facial animations, which is fantastic throughout, right? This is not just one character has great facial animations. Every single character has lifelike facial animations with eyes that are not dead, and things like that, right? We all know those games that we play and we look at a character and go, there's nothing behind there. These characters do not have that. And that's testament to the great work that's being done at Ninja Theory. But yeah, can you imagine like Fable's forests looking like this? That's what my head went to when walking around this world. Where I was like, can you imagine? Even if we can get 75% of it, like 80% of like this world and this graphical fidelity, and you know, again, it gets a lot harder when the game gets open world. Obviously, we all know that it's so hard to do.
Yeah, you got to procedurally generate more stuff. Yeah,
exactly.
Or to generate more stuff. But yeah,
this game as a whole it's a set piece. It is like watching a movie at times. You know, there's moments in the cutscene where I wasn't moving my controller because I thought I was still in a cutscene and I wasn't. I was meant to move forwards, and I was like, oh God, sorry, my bad. I didn't mean to stop climbing.
Yeah, so again, I mentioned it briefly, like photo mode kind of highlighted something for me. Literally everything is in engine, like nothing is like pre-generated cutscene, because photo mode is a good example of that, being able to like pause the game in a cutscene, move the camera around within that cutscene, because it's all been done within that engine, and it's like it's just within the gameplay engine, but they just managed to make cutscenes out of it because it's that goddamn beautiful. And again, yeah, this is a benchmark for not only what the Series X can do or the Series consoles, because I've heard good things about the Series S for it as well, but what Unreal can do. I've been a big proponent about how excited I am about Unreal 5 coming into play in a lot more games. And if this is what we're going to start getting out of it, yes, please.
Crash.
Yeah, the game is absolutely gorgeous. The lighting is completely fantastic. There's moments where they do stuff with the graphics that like are kind of bewildering. Specifically, I think it's chapter 4. I'm not gonna get too much into it. You pick up orbs at a certain point and something happens. And I think every time that happened, I was just sort of like awestruck a little bit with how they did it and how good it looked. Very fluid. They have a lot of like trippy moments, a lot of creepy moments. They go in and out, and it all feels very surreal with how they have the graphics. Absolutely blown away by how good this looks. I don't know if there's a game that even comes remotely close to this for me in terms of just like detail and quality. Like there are games that overall, like I think Cyberpunk's a good one to talk about because that is an open world. You have a lot of volumetric fog and stuff like that. And that game, that you get into a whole different category with graphics when you're talking about it. But just what you see in Hellblade 2 is just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I think there's two specific things that stand out for me is that really kind of touched like how special this is. Weirdly, the combat mode is part of it when you do the focus attacks and the way that they change the FPS in that. So I think it feels like it switches down to like 24 frames when you're doing the focus attacks. And it feels so cool and so special when those happen. And it just kind of like makes it a standout moment. And it kind of, and when you feel it kind of move in and out between those two kind of frame modes, but it does it so fluidly and it's so cool. And then there was one specific moment in the game where you are having to go down into a cave, and there is a bit where you basically got to crawl through the tiniest slot in the ground. And one thing that I've never really talked about in public is I've got a genuine fear of being trapped in closed spaces. And I felt unnerved because of how realistic it felt, of like seeing Senua struggle to get through these enclosed spaces. And it was like, it's so realistic. It actually gave me anxiety for a little bit, and I had to stop that evening to play and then come back the next day. And I think that is a testament to how good they've done with this game. And I think one thing we've not talked about as well, Senua, like I think is her name Melina or Melissa. I can't remember the name of the actress.
Melina, I believe.
Yeah, she's like she's winning all the awards, right? Like literally all of them.
Hey, too early, mate. Too early. It's too early because hey, I've played a lot of games this year that are pretty good. So too early to say.
I just think her performance in this game is like one of the
it's phenomenal
best performances I've seen in a game.
I think there's a few things we haven't spoke about. The soundtrack of this game, fantastic. I think music is such a thing that gets forgotten about, and sound design as a whole gets forgotten about in gaming quite often. The soundtrack behind this game is fantastic. It brings out some of the greatest scenes in this game. Is when the music is composed perfectly. And obviously we've seen it with a lot of games this year, actually. Like I think Infinite Wealth does it really well. I think Final Fantasy does it really well. Obviously, I think this game is included in that. We've got a lot of good games with great soundtracks. And the other thing I want to bring up is again, I feel like because the first game did it so well that it's kind of gone forgotten about, is the voices. I do think the voice design and the whole 3D audio and make sure you're wearing headphones when playing this game and all that cannot be understated or overstated. I don't know which way I meant to say that. Overstated, thank you. In how good it is. Like, I think it's because the first game was the first game to do it, right? Where you kind of go, oh my god, this is amazing. Oh my god, everyone speaks about it. Now we've seen it in a sequel and it's just as good. We kind of forget that, like, nobody else has done it. The game it's been 7 years. It's been 7 years since this game came out, since the original came out, right? Why it's similar to the Nemesis system, right? Where something is so good, we're like, why is everyone not doing it? And then you're like, well, there's clearly a reason, because it clearly takes a lot of hard work, a lot of talented people to do it, and that's something that Ninja Theory has.
I think it also comes down to the fact that it obviously has to be used for the right reasons, and I think it leans so well into the story of Senua. It would feel a bit kind of shoehorned if it wasn't for a similar reason to include it. But I think it's even better this time around as well. I think they've gone above and beyond with the sound. I think I honestly have zero faults for it, and I think you raised a good point about the music as well. It emphasizes some of the bits in this game so well. There is a specific fight scenes I can remember where it starts playing these big epic soundtracks in the background. I'm like, this is making me feel like a badass. And you know, you're taking on these enemies, and whatever issues you have with the combat, like when you are pulling off like the perfect dodge and the perfect attack, and then hitting them with a focus attack and switching to somebody else as you see somebody else get run through in the corner, and it's just like this is an experience. And I think
Yeah,
that kind of
no.
boils down what this game is. This game is an experience. And I think everything they've put in to make it that, they've nailed it perfectly. And yeah, I think it's just the gaming side of it didn't land as well as everything else, but everything else landed so well.
We'll get there. Anything else to add, Crush?
No, I think the audio all around was just super, super solid. The voices were very cool again. I think we'll get more into that probably whenever we record a spoiler cast, because there's a lot of like narrative stuff to talk about that. Soundtrack always, I think throughout the whole game from beginning to end, the soundtrack was on point. There wasn't a point where I was like, this sounds a little bit odd or something felt off. The setting was always straight from visuals to audio. They did a fantastic job with all that.
Agreed. 100% agreed. Boys, let's talk score. Obviously, we're trying to score things more over here at My Xbox and Me, MXAM. If I had to score the game, I'll start us off. I would put as an experience, 10 out of 10. But as a video game, and unfortunately that is what we're scoring it on, I sit at a 7. And the reason I sit at a 7 is, number one, I just don't think there is enough meat on the bones when it comes to being a video game as such. Don't get me wrong, I knew what I was getting when I went in on this experience, and I think that is a key moment for anyone watching this, wanting maybe a reason, wanting to know, should I purchase this game? If you want to purchase a beautifully crafted, amazing experience where you're going to get some of the best probably the best graphics in a video game you'll ever see, some of the best audio you will ever see, some of the most fantastic sound pieces and soundtracks you will ever hear, and then its gameplay is really where the game lets itself down. I think the problem with the game ultimately, and the reason it gets a 7 for me, is there is no progression. What you get at the start of the game is what you get at the end of the game throughout. It doesn't feel like you're building, and then, oh my god. And I think the first game had that, because it had that moment where you remember that moment you're going for the sword, and you're going, and then you get it, and then it's like, damn, I'm a badass. This game doesn't have that. And for obvious reasons, it's not the same story they're telling, right? But I don't feel like we built to anything. Like, don't get me wrong, the story carries on, and there's a building in the story, but there isn't a building in the gameplay feeling for me, where you go from weak. You know, most games, you start off weak, you level up, you become big badass, you win the game. This game, in its gameplay, doesn't have that. And obviously there's a very obvious reason for that, because they're crafting a story in a very specific and particular way, but that doesn't lend itself well to the gameplay that is here, is my biggest critique. And that's why it's a 7. Everything else we spoke about already, its environment's beautiful, its soundtrack amazing, its story interesting, even if it's not fully for me, but that's where I come down on it, a 7 for me overall. Deespan, we'll go to you.
So I feel like I'm going to be the outlier here, but I feel like I'm personally an 8, and I feel like if I got given more time to think about it, I'd probably go even higher than that. But right now, I think like you said, the story for me is 100% a 10 out of 10. I absolutely love what they've done with the story. I think the way that it progresses from the first game's story and how that ended to how this one begins and then ends, I think you can see a really good through line through it, and the growth of Senua as a character. But again, I think it is a very much a case of, like, where you guys have touched on, there is certain elements lacking from this as a video game that I think, honestly, if they just had a bit more time, which is weird to say for a game that's been in development for 7 years. But yeah, but no, like, but yeah, I don't even want to say give them more time, because I disagree. I feel like this is the game they wanted to make, and that is fine. Yeah. But for me as a player, yeah, I kind of agree. There are some certain things lacking. Puzzles definitely felt like a bit of a step back in some elements. The lack of, like, having a world this beautiful and having no reason to, like, explore it is a crime in itself. But yeah, so personally, I would say an 8.
Crash?
I was so conflicted playing this game. In my head, I kept going back on like, this is an amazing 10 out of 10 game to this is not a great game. And whenever I didn't have to play the game, it is one of the best experiences I've had in a video game. Whenever I had to play it, whenever I had to do combat, whenever I had to solve a puzzle, with the exception of chapter 4, I think chapter 4 is the highlight of the whole game for me. It is the best chapter in the whole game. I think other than that chapter, I was just felt lackluster. And so for me, it's a 7, I think. I think if you tighten up the combat, I think literally just tighten up the combat, this immediately jumps up to like a 9 for me. It's just the combat holds it back so much.
I think for me, it goes to an 8. If the combat felt more, if I felt the combat a bit more, it would go to that. And again, could we not have got a different weapon? Could we not have got an axe? Could we not have got? I get it, it's a sword, but could we not have got something different? It's a sequel, you know, like. Even little things, just little things like that. It's like, it feels very, like, and I know I said it at the start of the show, and probably saying it's a 1.5 is probably very disrespectful. So maybe I take that back. But do you know what I mean? Like, we couldn't have got a different weapon.
Yeah, the structure of the combat and the puzzles definitely feels like a 1.5. Everything else is easily a 2.0. Yeah.
Agreed.
But no, I get where you're coming from. I can't.
So overall. Are we happy to settle on a 7?
I'd say so,
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah? No one wants to fight me?
Yeah, it should be a 5.
Oh, Jesus.
You know what? No, it's a 10. It's a 10.
It's definitely not. So overall...
7. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Overall, my Xbox and me gives Hellblade 2 a 7 out of 10 for its fantastic set pieces, its fantastic world building, its interesting and fun story, and where it lacks is in its gameplay moment to moment. I hope you guys enjoyed this review discussion of Hellblade 2 Senua Saga. If you want to see more of discussions like this, or listen to more discussions like this, keep it locked to my Xbox and me. See ya.